This video is sponsored by ConnectedU eSIMs. If you want to stay connected around the world when you travel, make sure to stick around to the end of this video to get my discount code for your next eSIM purchase. Hello my friends and fellow travelers, my name is Pierce, this is my channel Tales on the Road. Thanks so much for stopping by. Today, we're going to talk about one of my favorite cities in Southeast Asia, a place that people don't really look forward to traveling to, but I would say is one of the hidden gems of that region. The city, of course, I'm talking about is Kuala Lumpur, which is the capital of Malaysia, its largest city, and an absolute melting pot with some of arguably the world's best food and a very diverse, interesting culture that just has to be explored. In today's video, I'm going to tell you everything you need to know before you go to make sure that you have an awesome, epic, and authentic time in the capital of Malaysia. If that sounds good, let's get into the content. As we always do with these videos, let's talk a little geographical and historical background so we get to know Kuala Lumpur a little bit better before we go. So first up, where are we going to find Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia? So Malaysia actually has two sectors. There is the part of the country that's in the Borneo Island that shares that island with Brunei, which is a small sort of kingdom country, and Indonesia. On the other side, which is the more populated part of Malaysia, is what we call Peninsular Malaysia, which has Thailand to its north and Singapore as a sort of city-state, sort of island to the south. The history of Malaysia being this southern peninsular access to the various islands of Southeast Asia, which make up the majority of Indonesia today, means many different people groups went through this island, leaving their religion, their culture, their architecture, and their impressions on the Malaysian society, which can of course be found today. When you go to Malaysia, and Singapore for that matter, you're going to find some distinct ethnic groups. You're going to find the Tamils of South India and Sri Lanka, very interesting. You're going to find people from mainland China, which is a large chunk of their population today in Malaysia. You're going to find ethnically indigenous Malay people who come from the island chains of what we consider now today Indonesia and Malaysia. And you're also going to find people from all various backgrounds because Malaysia was part of the British Commonwealth and they brought different laborers from different places to work the various mineral resources that Malaysia had to offer. Malaysia also is one of the most important shipping lanes that you're going to find in Southeast Asia, so a lot of people have come through this area and left their impression. Specifically Arab traders from like the 1500s, which is why today Malaysia is actually an Islamic majority country, which most people don't think about when they think of Southeast Asia. Regarding Kuala Lumpur and its history, it's a bit of a new city, popping up in the 1850s, mostly as an establishment for Chinese laborers to work the mines around the area where Kuala Lumpur is and to access the river, so basically for trading. In the late 1800s, Kuala Lumpur became the capital of British-mandated Malaysia as Malaysia was absorbed into the British Empire, and the story of modern Malaysia really took off from there. A very important trading area for British East Indies activity, Malaysia, including Kuala Lumpur, was an administrative capital for the British Empire for a long time in that region until World War II. The Japanese took it for a couple of years, the British resumed power, and in 1963, the country of Malaysia got its independence, and Kuala Lumpur remains its administrative capital until today. Kuala Lumpur is an economic center, a financial center, a center with really cool mixed traditions, and a place with a very strong identity that many people really enjoy. It's a cool city with a lot to do, an interesting history, and almost 2 million people. So let me tell you more about the practical information of Kuala Lumpur so you can explore this really interesting place the right way. Before we hop into the next section about Kuala Lumpur, let's talk about staying connected to family and friends when we travel abroad. And this is where the sponsor of today's video, ConnectedU, comes in. ConnectedU offers global downloadable eSIMs that start at just $9. These eSIMs keep you connected at whatever your travel destination is, including popular ones like the US, France, UK, here in Italy, or even all the way in Malaysia in the topic of today's video, Kuala Lumpur. The best part about a downloadable eSIM is that you don't have to deal with the physical nature of an eSIM. Many phones don't physically carry SIM cards anymore, and in many countries, the tourist prices for SIM cards are exorbitantly high and definitely a ripoff. So, save yourself some time, some money, and some hassle by using ConnectedU today. Make sure to buy your ConnectedU eSIM before you travel. And if you do, make sure to use my link in the description below or enter my discount code TALES for 10% off your next purchase. Let's start off with visas. You can stay 90 days in Malaysia as an American tourist. You're definitely not going to want to spend 90 days in Kuala Lumpur, but traveling around the country, there's definitely enough to explore. It's a very diverse, very interesting country with great biodiversity, great jungle vibes, good beach vibes, and then you can go over to Borneo, which is a whole different experience. Money. In Malaysia, they use something called the Malaysian ringgit, and the ringgit normally trades between 4 ringgit to $1 US. Malaysia is one of the most cost-effective countries I've personally ever traveled to. You can find a hostel for less than $10. You can find a pretty reasonable hotel around $30 US. You could probably get a cheaper deal depending on where you find it. Kuala Lumpur has high-class stuff for high-class people, they have mid-class stuff for mid-class people, and they have backpacker hostels for backpacker people. It's really easy. I find that Southeast Asia always has all of the tiers exactly how you want it. If you want to spend $150, $300 a night, you definitely can, and you're going to get really high-class stuff. If you want to spend $5 and sleep on like a slab of wood, you can also do that equally well. Really love the hostel culture because, of course, Southeast Asia is a big backpacker hotspot. It's very fun. But in general, Malaysia is a really good deal. You can eat at one of their hawker centers, which you can think of like a Malaysian food court that's sometimes outside, but it's not like in a mall, it's like outside. And you can probably find a bunch of different dishes that are sub $5 that are just fantastic. Food is quite cheap or inexpensive, if you want to say. Staying is a really good deal. Excursions are not going to break the bank. I think the most expensive thing you can do in Malaysia is go to the top of the Petronas Towers, which are the sort of the symbol of Kuala Lumpur and the symbol of modern Malaysia. That ticket's, of course, not going to break the bank, but it is more expensive probably than you would assume. Transportation. Kuala Lumpur is an incredibly modern city, which means that they have incredibly modern transportation options. They have a really nice integrated light rail and metro system, which can get you basically anywhere in the greater Kuala Lumpur area, because it actually is quite a wide city with a lot of different suburbs, very easily. They have pretty nice buses that run efficiently and honestly pretty on time from what I've experienced. And they have Grab Taxi, which is basically like Uber. You can hop in a Grab taxi or even on a Grab bicycle because they have motorbike taxis as well. You can get to anywhere you want in the city very easily. The thing to know about transportation when it comes to Kuala Lumpur is so freaking hot. It is a really, really, really hot city. Like Singapore, honestly, is the hottest city I've ever been to. Kuala Lumpur is definitely up there. Sweaty, hot, all the time, very oppressive sun. So it's not going to be a city you want to walk around in. Ubers are good. They have really good air conditioning everywhere you go. The air conditioning within the public transportation is also good. Southeast Asia, they really blast that air conditioning. So anywhere you go, you're going to be okay. But if you have to do long distance walking, like if you want to walk around the city during the day, it's just like not the vibe. You can always tell tourists because they always are the people walking around during the day. Because most of the local people during the day are in a mall, they're at their house, they're like avoiding the sun at all costs because it's just too hot. When the nighttime hits in Kuala Lumpur, the city erupts with activity and liveliness. During the day, not so much. Languages and people. I want to tell you really quick about the Malay people and what's going on because it's a very diverse country and it's not exactly straightforward. Basically, people in Malaysia and Kuala Lumpur in general, they speak Malay as a first language, but it depends on what background they have. Because if they're Malay, like indigenous Malay, of course that's their language. But if they are Tamil Indian or they are Chinese, ethnically Chinese, they're probably speaking one of those two languages as their first language. They probably understand Malay, as a lot of people learn Malay in school. And then many people speak English because English is really recognized and well known, as well as having been a British colony. There's British schools. So you might meet a lot of people from Kuala Lumpur who actually speak with a British accent and like pretty good. So getting around in English is very reasonable. The only thing that you might encounter is if you go to a really Chinese restaurant, you might not find translations as easily, just in the same case if you go to a really Tamil restaurant, because Tamil is also written in a different script. Of course, the people typically understand English. I've never really experienced finding a ton of different people, especially in Kuala Lumpur, that don't speak English. A lot of times they'll have English subtitles under these things, but it's really interesting to see signs written in Tamil, signs written in Chinese, signs written in English, signs written in Malay. It's a very diverse country. But the one word that's really important is terima kasih, which means thank you so much. And in response to that, you can say samba samba, which I always find very cute, very funny. All right, so now on to my favorite section, which is food. Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia in general, but Kuala Lumpur in particular, is one of the best food cities in the world. I'm ranking it. It's my opinion. That's how I feel. But you can debate me, but that's how I'm feeling. The reason for that is that you've got all these different ethnic diverse people, which means that they all left their food and you can all access like hyper authentic stuff from many different people at the same time. Tamil food, that means South Indian food. Excellent, excellent, excellent in Kuala Lumpur. Number two, you've got really good Chinese food, both from the immigrants who come from the mainland of China and then from the people who have been in this specific Southeast Asian peninsula for a couple hundred years, if not 500 years. Chinese people have been coming down, going back up for a really long time, and that's left really, really good Chinese food. Lastly, Malaysian food is really, really good as well. It's a super cool mixture of all of these different things, plus some things you'd find more regularly in Indonesia. Lots of stuff with tropical fruits, with tropical things like coconut, do a lot of curries, sort of in a style that looks very similar to Indian. They do the banana leaves, you eat off banana leaves often. It's just a good melting pot of everything. The national dish of Malaysia is probably something called nasi lemak, which is basically like rice in a sort of banana leaf that they steam. I'm pretty sure it's coconut rice. And they serve it with all these little different fixins. You can, of course, see the picture here. There's variations of this, but in general, I love the crossover blends of the food culture where you see like a Chinese style dish have an Indian spiced sort of idea in a Malaysian interpretation, and it all rounds out to something incredibly delicious. Like, for example, something I really enjoy eating in Malaysia in general is some kind of curry with rice or with paratha. Paratha is a bread that comes traditionally from southern India. You can mop up all that good sauce and everything. Everything's so saucy and delightful. You can get amazing noodle soups from China. You can get awesome curry dishes from India. You can get all of this stuff that comes together with a reinterpretation of the Malaysian palate, and it's just something incredible. To finish up, I really do love something called teh tarik, which is called pulled tea. I think it originally comes from India, but the Malaysians have made it a big part of their sort of dining culture. And you'll see vendors taking sort of like a sweetened milk tea, and they pull it. So they have the cup here, and they have the hot tea here, and they pull it like this. Can be served hot, can be served cold. Lots of sugar, really bad for you. So delicious. Everything in Malaysia is intense. The heat, the sounds, the smell, the food, the drinks, the sugar. I mean, everything is like dialed up to a 10. Besides the vibe itself is very chill, and like that sort of matches the sort of interesting thing about Malaysia. It's everything you expect about Southeast Asia, reinterpreted and mixed around. All right, we're gonna finish the video by telling you some of my favorite things to do in Kuala Lumpur. And this video has been incredibly hard to make because I don't know if you can see, but I've been battling Italian flies and the heat all at the same time, which has made me have to stop recording and get back into it. Anyways, let's talk about what you do in Malaysia. People always tell you to go to the Petronas Towers, which are these two twin towers that are the symbol of Kuala Lumpur. You can go up to an observation deck on the 41st floor, or you can go all the way to the tippy top on the 86th floor and get a really cool view of the city. I've done this. It was okay. I don't know if it was worth the money. I don't think you necessarily need to do it if you want to. It's pretty touristy. There's definitely a line sometimes, but in general, it's nice. Long story short, on the Petronas Towers, I think if that's something you want to do, you can. There's also plenty of other observation decks where you can go to a bar, you can grab a drink, or non-alcoholic, up to you. You can sit on top and you can look over Kuala Lumpur proper. It's a very interesting thing. It's a lot cheaper and you get a drink than going to the Petronas Towers, no drink, and more expensive. Next, around the area of the Petronas Towers is a very new, nice area with some shopping malls called KLCC Park. It's a nice, really modern interpretation of a modern Southeast Asian city. If that's for you, definitely go for it. If I was you, during the evening time or even to like happy hour time, you can go to Bukit Bintang or Bukit Bintang, however you want to pronounce it. This is sort of the fun part of the city. They've got shopping, they've got a lot of bars and restaurants, good restaurants, and it's very lively. It's very busy. A lot of people come out at the end of the day to just be out in the city. So I think that's a really cool area. It's very lively. That's where the nightlife is in the city. So if you're not in Bukit Bintang at the bars or the restaurants there, you can take your talents to Jalan Alor. Jalan Alor is the food street of Kuala Lumpur. Lots of different restaurants serving really different Malaysian specialties, specifically with a focus on Chinese Malaysian specialties. You can find some Indian restaurants around the back that serve really awesome Indian food in the really like proper Indian way. This is like a foodie paradise. You can try durian, which is that weird spiky fruit of Southeast Asia. You can eat like a big thing of crab. You can, any sort of like food experience you want, you can have. It's a little bit over market value based on the other restaurants that you're gonna find around Malaysia, but it's super packed, super busy, really good, just interesting to be out because you can really see what's going on in a night market in Kuala Lumpur and see the food diversity as well as the diversity of the people and other tourists. One thing that also stands out about Kuala Lumpur, and you'll see it a bit in the architecture, is that it is a modern Southeast Asian Islamic city. That means that they have a very large national mosque that you can go visit. It's one of the biggest mosques in the world, and it's very modern and interesting. It's worth taking a look if you find that cultural stuff interesting. They also have a very interesting Islamic arts museum that's definitely worth a visit. The branding and style of Islam from Southeast Asia, specifically from Indonesia and Malaysia, is very different than what you'd find in the Middle East. So if you're interested in being a little bit of a culture adventurer, that's definitely something to check out. A lot of the food that you'll also see is halal in Malaysia, although many of the Malaysian population, specifically the ethnic Chinese and the ethnic Indians, are not Islamic. interesting mix. The day trip that's highly recommended from Kuala Lumpur is to go to the Batu Caves. The Batu Caves are actually a Hindu site, mostly relevant to the Indian populations of Malaysia. And there they've built a big golden statue of a god. They actually have really good restaurants in front if you want to try some Indian food. And you can climb these rainbow colored stairs all the way up into the actual cave. There's monkeys, there's a Hindu holy site. It's very interesting. You're sort of in the jungle from there. You can get there with a grab taxi. You can get there, of course, by public transportation. Depends what you want to do. But it's definitely on the bucket list of things to do in Kuala Lumpur. It's very beautiful and definitely worth the short trip out of the city. Other than that, I would say Kuala Lumpur, not in a bad way, is not the most hyper interesting city of Southeast Asia. It's very comfortable for a lot of reasons. A lot of people who live in Kuala Lumpur also live in suburbs. So it's a very different vibe than what you would find in a very densely packed city like Bangkok or Ho Chi Minh, for example. My thing about Kuala Lumpur is really, really nice people, interesting mix of culture, and some of the best food you're gonna find anywhere. So I think that's gonna do it for me in this video. If you found the travel info helpful, please make sure to like and subscribe. Definitely helps the channel out. If you have any questions or you wanna help planning a trip to Kuala Lumpur, feel free to message me below, and I will see you guys in the next one. Terima kasih. I want to thank again ConnectedU for sponsoring this video. Make sure to use my discount code TAILS at checkout for 10% off your next purchase.